What's on, where, and when. It's the Talk of Nelson. NBS Talk Nelson.
At NBS, we believe in banking for life. For over 160 years, we've been a trusted banking provider for generations of locals like you. We know our clients personally and build long-term relationships with them, offering flexibility by giving our staff freedom to make quick decisions to put them first. Experience banking for life with NBS.
The Mako Rugby Roundup.
Welcome to the Mako Rugby Roundup. I'm Chris Butler, and it's a welcome back to my co-host Les Edwards. Great to have you here, Les. Welcome back.
Wonderful to be here. Third season. Looking forward to a lot of good shows and good chat.
Yeah, it just seems not that long ago, does it? But a lifetime ago, but then not so long ago. But back into it, we're thrilled to be here. And of course, the whole idea of the show is to bring you the latest news and updates for rugby right across the top of the South. We're also very excited to announce that Talk Nelson itself has a new naming rights sponsor, and that's NBS. So it's now going to be known as NBS Talk Nelson. Thank you very much to Nick and the team. And of course, they're great supporters of rugby in our region, and it's great to have them on board. So how's that? Fantastic.
Yeah, they are great community sponsors, not just rugby, but every aspect of community life in our region is supported by NBS. Wonderful to have them on board.
We're going to get members of the team on throughout the season to give us an update of what NBS does in the community. Of course, Tony Cadigan, the chief, he's a rugby man through and through, so it'd be great to talk to Tony at some point as well. The other very exciting news is that we have a new venue sponsor. And we've travelled to the world of Stoke, Stoke Rugby. How you feeling, Les? Being a Marist man, you feeling comfortable?
Oh, absolutely. I've been to this venue a number of times, so yeah, welcome to the show. And great to be at the Turf Hotel.
It's certainly been a venue in many of our lives growing up over the years. It's a great venue and a great supporter of local sport. And it's a warm welcome to Stan from the Turf Hotel. Great to have you here, Stan.
Oh, great to be here.
Mate, can you tell us a little bit about taking over the Turf and what you can offer the patrons?
Well, yeah, it's been nearly 9 months now that I've been here and absolutely loving it. And loving being part of the community and supporting the sports around here.
So what can we expect when we come to the Turf?
Oh, we've got great service and we've also got some really amazing foods and drinks available as well.
So you've got lots of screens around the place, so plenty of chance to catch all the action.
Yeah, we've got all the sports. We've got the NRL and we've got the Super Rugby on just now. And then we've also got live music basically every Friday and Saturday nights. And then most Thursday nights we've got the jam sessions. But Lou Bragg's away on holiday just now.
Oh.
So, yep.
Oh, well, that should be a fun night out. And also you got a TAB here as well. And you do bar meals, but if you want to sit down, tell us about the Batch.
Yeah, so we've got the Batch restaurant. We've got an a la carte menu in there. We've got some really amazing things. One of my favourites is the Yorkshire puddings. It's a really nice entree. It's a sort of a nice little take on sausage roll done in a completely different way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
Oh, look, mate, we really appreciate you coming on board and gives us an opportunity to promote local sport and you providing this venue. It's just fantastic. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Cheers. And our other guest is Baz Hanaro, who's the chairman of Tasman Rugby Union. Great to have you here, mate.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Kia ora, everyone.
So how long have you been in that role now?
Ooh, just under a year. So
is that right? Geez. So that's there's been quite a few changes lately, hasn't there? So it's been hitting the ground running, isn't there?
Yeah, it was definitely a introduction by fire, I guess, into the role. But thoroughly loving it and a lot of moving parts. But good.
Tell us a little bit about your backstory. So you're actually a Marlborough man, is that right? Or not originally?
No, originally born in Gisborne. Went to school in Central Hawke's Bay, Te College as a boarder down there. Left there, moved in with the army, did some time with them, quite a long time actually. and then left the army, moved and did some time overseas, just doing various things. And then I guess my pathway led me back to Picton, of all places, and Blenheim. Got involved in the fishing and aquaculture industry, and then just evolved from there, and have been in the region for 20 years. So definitely, top of the south is home for me.
Yeah, right. Yes. And rugby, that was part of it, was it?
Well, it was hard not to be. I think when you move to a new region, you want to try and make some real good connects, and rugby is an easy way to do that. And fortunately, landed with a couple of good clubs, one by accident, but thoroughly enjoyed my time there. And then the second one, Central, which is where I'm at the moment, and really enjoying that club.
What was the first one, Baz?
I was working on a salmon farm, and there's a good man out there who was central aligned, and he was trying to get me to come to trainings. I was well past playing days. I think I was mid-30s by then, and he gave me the directions to. I was living in Renwick, and he gave me the directions to the Central training grounds. So I was on my way to training, stopped in at the Renwick Dairy, and there was a guy there, legendary guy of Renwick Rugby called Dangerous Davey Marsh, and he was standing in the dairy. He said, "You look like you're going to rugby training." So I am. I'm a bit lost. I'm just trying to feel my way there. And he said, "Oh, well, follow me." So we ended up at the Renwick Club training, and I guess the rest is history. Spent a couple of seasons with those boys, and then transitioned out of there to coach the Renwick Premiers. At that stage, they didn't have a Premier team. And then we brought it back in, and it was we had some difficult times on the park. We took some absolute thrashings, but we probably had the best times off it. Some of those stories out of the woody and bus trips with those boys. It was I couldn't sort of knock their commitment and their heart to their club. You're some big characters out of there, Martha boys, the Shotland boys, and just characters like Chopper. Ryan McQuinlan and Butthead and Hamish Greenwood and these type of characters that just absolutely, I think every club's got them, and these boys made me feel welcome. And then, and then I took a break from rugby, and then was working on a project out in the Marlborough Sounds with a Central Life member, Patrick Norton, who was nagging at me to get back involved. And then I met Kelly Langdon Lane.
Yes.
And again, they sort of said, come and get involved. So went to the Central Club. That was in 2013. Been there ever since, and I was really fortunate. There was a really good man to sort of come in under and sort of help me nurture me in that club, which was a big name, and not just Central Rugby, Marlborough Rugby and top of the south, and the Saul brothers, Neville and Mark. They sort of were good guides for me in the club. Allowed me to really settle in, first as a coach and then as an administrator on their committee, then the council of delegates, and then ended up here.
Right, fantastic. Well, we're going to learn more about your background later in the show, and also your role as chairman of the Tasman Rugby Union as well. Okay, let's get into senior club rugby, Les, and it all starts off this week.
Yeah.
So, geez, how's that?
Yeah.
So senior men Division 1 Tasman Trophy. Tell us about what it looks like this season, Les.
Yeah, so Easter Thursday is the kickoff of the Tasman Trophy, and it doesn't seem that long ago that the final was played back in July, and here we are again on the journey to start again. We've got a 17 club a competition this year, so 5 clubs from Nelson Bays, the Kahurangi team, Maris, Nelson, Stoke and Waimea Old Boys, so and 2 Marlborough clubs, the defending premiers Central, and Muteri from Spring Creek. So a bit disappointing that we're 7 teams, and Baz will talk more about that, I'm sure, during the course of the show. But with 7 teams, what we end up with is 2 full rounds. So everyone plays each other home and away and get a couple of byes, and it'll all finish in time for the NPC with the final. So, yeah, it's a smaller comp than it has ever been, but the teams are very good. And I think the competition will be fairly even across the clubs. In terms of round 1, Easter Thursdays, there's some big games. We've got Central playing Muteri in the derby, if you like, at Lansdowne Park. You've got Marist playing Stoke at Trafalgar Park for the Basileri Trophy. And so, Stoke will be really wanting to get their hands on that piece of silverware. And then Waimea Old Boys are hosting Nelson at Jubilee Park. Now, all 3 games kick off at 7 p.m. Under lights.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
How's that?
So, it'll be just a terrific way to kick off the season. And Baz, you'd be looking forward to getting along to seeing Central versus Motori, wouldn't you?
Yeah. It's always a good local duel against those boys, and Motor have built really well. They've got some really good young talent coming through in their team. Jake Pacey, I see, was in the Canterbury under-20s or Crusader under-20s on the weekend. Successful campaign for them, and Munu Molly's out there.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
and Central, of course, have gone back to back with the Tasman Trophy. So they'll be looking for a three-peat, and they're a very, very good club. We've always admired the way that they've galvanised under Clinton McDonald and a couple other stalwarts, Baz included, at that club. And Mootry, as you say, a young side that last year did, basically an under-21 team, if you like, that did not default once. And that was their goal last year, just to put a team on the park, and they kept their numbers up, they kept their chins up, and it's great to see that they're back.
Yeah, and they've got some fantastic characters in the background who've always been there, but really behind them, the Lauren Gaines and, those type of guys that are really pushing that club along. So good to see.
Last year's semi-final, wasn't it? Marist versus Stoke. Well, no, it was Stoke and Central last year, wasn't it? Yeah, that's right. But Stoke, they grew a leg last year, didn't they?
They did, and they've recruited well. They've got some youngsters who have come to the region in the Tasman Academy, the Crusaders Academy, Nelson, I should say. So they've got some good players back. Marist, they've continued to keep the core. We've lost some key players, but some younger players have come in as well. So both those clubs are going to have reasonably good squads, and they just have to hope. Both of them, I think, have to hope that a couple of key players stay injury free.
Well, I remember, I must give a shout out to, I met Kerry Couture a couple of weekends ago. Nigel Couture, I think that's his cousin, came back from overseas, and they used to coach Bayswater in Perth, actually. But of course, both of them played for Nelson Bays. And what shirt was he wearing, Les?
A red one?
A Marist
one.
Oh,
good man. How did that happen?
There was a lot of Stoke boys there. There was Cyril Collier, and I unfortunately can't remember the rest of the guys. But I think even Nigel might have played for Stoke as well around that time. But Kerry, true blue Nelson Bays man, and wearing a Marist shirt. So there you go. Be very happy about that. He's got a lot of yarns. We need to get him on the show at some point. He does listen to, so a shout out to him. Now, I've heard all sorts in the off-season about Waimea Old Boys. There seems to be a few phone calls going around, and
bit of
recruitment and getting a few old boys back on the, I think Ben Coman comes to mind, and
Daniel Hightom is back.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, they're saying, right, that this is it. It's a call to arms, and we're on. Ben did say to me, hopefully it doesn't just last 5 minutes.
No, so last year they were a young side also, and they just needed some leadership, I think, a guiding hand on the park, and so the stalwarts have come back to try and provide a bit of that grunt and leadership, and they've also recruited the good first 5'8" and Sam Briggs from the Marist Club. It's a bit surprised to hear that, but so be it. Marist Club have got some good young fellas in the inside back. So, hey, spreading the talent around isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, and Nelson, how? Any thoughts on? Heard much about Nelson this year? Because they're a club that were rebuilding, really, weren't they?
Yeah, well, they continue to survive. Gary Stevens, who's their coach and their talisman, if you like, just continually keeps the game alive at the Nelson Club. I see they went off for a pre-season last week to Hanma Springs. I counted 16 players in the Nelson shirt. So, but he's keeping the team going, and we wish them all the very best. You want them to be strong, eh? The oldest club in New Zealand. They
always have been in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. And managed to catch up with Gazza a couple of times, and he is very much that. He's very much the talisman, and he's keeping those connections going, and he's doing a fantastic job at it. And I think they'll come back strong. I think there might be another slightly rebuilding year. I haven't heard a lot about that, but I think they'll be there or thereabouts.
Kahurangi gets the bye, but they'll be feeling pretty confident. They had a great season last year, didn't they?
Yeah, well, they've had some losses in terms of personnel, especially around the front row. I've heard, so it's important that they stay in the comp. Also, it's just important that every club survives and thrives, and that a club like Wanderers, hopefully we see them back at some stage in the future. Same over in Marlborough. We'd love to see Renwick back. We'd love to see Waitoi back, but it's a work in progress, isn't it?
They've got a strong, and it's interesting we mentioned those clubs over in Marlborough because they've got strong senior B teams. That's how we sort of grow that, and do we work alongside them to mature into premier teams. But yeah, absolutely. That club comp, and we've got some ideas around that. So I think we look at our development programs, we look at our Mako B side, for example, and how do we I guess inflate that into making a development pathway for those boys coming through club. A lot of them do, but how do we make that program bigger so that we get more exposure at it?
What Wanderers that didn't quite make it this year? I mean, that's another team that used to do very well in that first division, so they're still rebuilding, I guess.
Very strong at the Division 2 level and age grade and JAB. They're just not getting the young adults staying around in the region that can go on and form a Div 1 side. But that's not to say they won't stop trying. There's some really good leaders out at Wanderers, Charlie Taylor, Fraser Lockhead, and others who would be doing their very best to get back.
Division 2 and senior women, so not too far away. Division 2 commences, and be really interesting to see how the Tasman Trophy women's competition goes this year. Yeah,
so with Division 2, they get underway on the 20th of April, and that's where every club's strong. Every club's got a Division 2 side because it's more social, it's less intense training, less strength and conditioning. It's a game for every man. So all clubs have a good Div 2 side who just love playing the game for the game's sake and the aftermatch and whatnot. The women, they get going on the 4th of May, as I understand it. They still haven't announced all of the clubs. I know that Muteri, Marist, and Waimea Old Boys have confirmed a side, just waiting on a couple other.
Yeah, we're just waiting on confirmation from a couple of other clubs.
So are we hoping? So potentially 5?
4 or 5.
4 or 5. Right.
Could be 3, but you don't want that. You want a 14 minimum competition. So I know behind the scenes, the TAU with Estelle Uren, they're working really hard at trying to get a 4th team into the comp. It's just tough because the game's so popular with girls, the under 15s, under 18s, and through JAB, female participation strong. We've just got to get those ladies coming through the senior ranks at some point in time.
Well, it's it's something this region suffers from right across sports, isn't it? That away they go to university or other main centres, and they pick up the talent, don't they?
Oh, look, and what Lisa's saying is absolutely on the mark. These young girls coming through, like I was reading the other day in some of the reports where over in Marlborough, the Marlborough Girls College team, and their first push at registrations for their team, they had 34 registrations, and that was literally without really trying, and so that's huge. So that shows that the numbers and the growth of it. It's how we develop those into our premier sides, into the clubs.
Super Rugby round 6, and I guess the big story, the main story, Crusaders 0-5.
Possibly 0-6 because they're playing the Chiefs.
Yes,
Who would have thought it, eh?
Well, I mean, there was a bit of a clean out, wasn't there?
Well, yeah, they lost so much real good talent who reached the ends of their careers, and you take players like Whitelock and Ricky Mwanga out of any team, and you're going to be poorer for it. And then on top of that, some
key injuries.
Key injuries,
Oh.
man. I mean, to lose Will Jordan for the season, he's such an important piece. You tip differently if he's in the side.
To Mikey Williams.
Yeah, to Mighty Williams with a hamstring, Scott Barrett for a few weeks with a
Cody Taylor's out for a
Yeah.
little bit. So those are
And isn't
big-
Havili now injured?
Yeah.
He got injured on the weekend. Yeah.
Did he really?
Yeah.
No. Yeah, so look, they're going to have to keep their chins up. They've never been, I don't think, in the 12th spot for over a decade. So they'll just have to get used to it, and it'll come down to the character of the club, how they react to this and how they band together.
But I think if there's one club that you're gonna back to be there or thereabouts come the business end of the season and to get through this, it's the Crusaders.
Yep,
Right.
but they're
And
going to
they'll-
have to get going, aren't they?
Yes.
Dad?
And they'll stick with the structure though. I mean, they're not going to go sacking coaches or anything like that, would they?
No, I wouldn't
think
think
so.
so. No, they've got very young coaches. If you look at the coaches across the front of the desk, if you like, Daniel Perrin, James Marshall, and
Tamati Ellison.
Tamati Ellison, with Rob Penny sort of behind them. Rob Penny's there to mentor, nurture those young coaches because they knew that they weren't ready to take over straight away. So, they won't go sacking coaches. I don't
No,
think.
and I think-
That's not that sort of club.
I think the cool thing about those names we just mentioned, those young coaches, they all know what success looks like for their club. They know what it takes to get there. So that's the bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tough game against the Chiefs. They're traveling pretty well, aren't they? So Chiefs win there.
Yeah, interesting. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting stat there though. While Damien McKenzie is on the park, their points ratio for and against is a lot higher than when he comes off the park. So he's a real key part of the Chiefs lineup for them to keep on their winning ways, and also very valuable for the All Blacks come the end of Super Rugby and Test matches because he's an outstanding form.
And they'll be tested, once that All Black rest does come in for Damien, how, just like, you say the Crusaders are missing Moana. Well, they're about to go through a period where they're going to have to play without Damien.
True.
What Lisa's just mentioned is absolutely on point, They're a different team without him.
Moana Pacifica versus the Blues. And I mean, they've been performing okay at Moana Pacific, haven't they? Probably would like to be playing like the Drua. They're playing amazing at the moment. But the Blues are just going to be too strong, aren't they?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. This is one of those games where you have to, with rational thinking, you've got to tip the Blues by 13 plus easily. Moana, they do try really hard and they stay in a game for 40, 50 minutes, but then it's at the end that it all tells for them. But they have 2 wins. They're playing at home. They'll give it a good crack.
And then we've got, it'd be a good game, Hollanders versus the Hurricanes. Hollanders started off with a hiss and a roar, didn't they? But my guess is the teams have warmed up. They haven't quite been able to match those top sides, have they?
No, but I think, there's a few combinations and they're still finding their feet. They're pretty much a brand new backline. So I think once that starts to click, doesn't help with what will likely be a suspension for their midfielder until after the weekend. But I think once they come right, and I've seen it, watch them a few times now where they've come back late in the game, so the fitness is there. It's just the combinations. I think, and once they start to click.
And I do like their 5'8" from Wales, Ryan Patchell. I think he goes really, really well for them. So if he's on the park, they're going to be organised. He's quite nice to watch. Good halfback. Fakatava is in outstanding form. Actually, the richness of halfbacks across the New Zealand franchise is amazing. Aaron Smith disappears, and you wouldn't batter an eyelid at picking any of these halfbacks to lead the way for the All Blacks. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Super Rugby Aupiki, round 5. So Matatu seems to be leading the way at the moment, and they're taking on the Hurricanes on Friday.
No, you've got that a little
Oh, have I? Wrong way round.
Matatu of the defending champions.
Oh, sorry. Yes,
Yeah.
it's not 4-0. It's 0-4.
Yes.
So the defending champions, but they're doing it a little bit tough this
Yes,
year.
they are.
And then they're playing the Hurricanes Power, who are 1-3. So that's sort of 3v4, if you like. And then at the top of the table, you've got
Chiefs.
Chiefs Manawa, 4-0 playing the Blues, 3-1. So that, you know, that Saturday game, 2:05 p.m. is going to be the interesting match to put your eye on.
So have you found Super Rugby for the women? So
I like the way the ladies play the game.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I like the fact that it's not overtly physical. You know, they're not trying to smash each other. They tackle properly, and the continuity is pretty good. You know, the rugby's a good standard. So yeah, it's a competition that, you know, just watch a game, and especially this game at 2:00 on Saturday. That'll just show you that the standard's quite high.
and then shout out to some Mako women who are playing in the Australian comp.
Yeah, so delighted that three of our players from last year's team, Kasi Siatanga, Lucy Brown and Sui Paresa, are playing for the Rebels over in Australia. And Eva Sawira, who's a Marist club girl who made her debut in rugby, club rugby, Mako rugby, and now international rugby, is playing for the Fijian Rua. So, yeah, shout out to those ladies.
Absolutely. Our special guest is Baz Hanare, who's the chairman of the Tasman Rugby Union. And we talked about your playing days with Central and what the club means to you. Are you still involved? Because you travel between the provinces, don't you, quite a bit? You're living over here at the moment? Is that
Living
right?
over here, but my work takes me over there, or weekly. I'm traveling back and forth, and still a lot of other personal interests over there. But yeah, still involved with the club in terms of just helping them out where they need, in terms of just looking at some of their funding models if they need it. But they're pretty sorted now, in the back room, which is
Who drives the club?
I
know it's Quinton and
Ricky,
and Ricky
Winitana. So we've got some pretty solid coaches at Prem level in terms of Quinton. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better man in charge there of that team. Ricky Winitana's in alongside him, and Hamish McKero's in alongside them. So we've got three.
Who runs the club? Who's the president and driver there?
So Dave McCormick's running our club at the moment,
Right.
Assisted by Lisa Winitana. She's the club secretary, and Walkins is our treasurer.
Okay.
So yeah.
So you're well organised there in terms of back office and getting your share of funding and.
Yeah. I think we're like everyone. You put your application in for a little bit there, you hold your breath, and then hope it comes through, and then but fortunate.
So from club rugby, let's go to the TAU, because that's why you're here, mate. You're the top dog at Tasman Rugby Union, chair of the board. So you were elected to the board as a Marlborough delegate by the clubs. So what does your role as an elected community rugby representative on the board entail? Because you've got to deal with that first before you think about being chair,
correct.
right?
So it's essentially when I came on, I was a member of the Marlborough Council of Delegates, and then position became open. We had to elect someone else, and nominations came in. So I put my hand up and was fortunate to get elected. So my role in that space was to take our the COD interests and what they see is pertinent to the Marlborough space, I guess, or area, and then take that forward from all the clubs and the community and take that forward to a board level. But still, once you're on the board, it's to put it on the table, to discuss it and go through, but also try and figure out a way on how that interconnects with the whole regional requirement. So it's twofold, really, to represent Marlborough and the community and clubs over there, bring their ideas to the table, and then work in with the wider board to see how that connects.
Yeah, because you're dealing with 3 independents.
Oh, absolutely.
And you're dealing with 2 delegates from Nelson Bays. So, it can't just be, this is what Marlborough wants. You've got to do a little bit of horse trading, I'd imagine, on some issues.
Yeah, and it's good. There's always open discussion around it all.
Yeah.
So it's good, and not everyone's going to agree, of course.
So at a club level, you get involved in the operations and stuff. How are you finding it being more governance driven as a Marlborough delegate on a board?
Yeah, it was a bit of a learning curve. I've done governance before, but not to this level at a rugby space. So it was really good to get in amongst it. I found it a little bit overwhelming at the start, to be honest, because there's so much to take in. I think the first thing I got sent to me was the last 2 years worth of board meetings, and said, "I'll read all these minutes." And I was like, "Wow!" So just coming up to speed with that was interesting. And then understanding the dynamic of it being Tasman, we are a mixture of 2 sub-unions. So it was really good to understand and learn a bit more about that from a governance perspective. Yep.
So now that you've got that focus as board chair, what keeps you awake at night?
Lots of things lately, but the main one, and we touched on it earlier with Les, was we've got to look at our club land. We've got to understand how we grow our game, participation in our game from a young boys and girls aspect, and bringing those players through to reflect a good club level, and and the numbers within our clubs, because unless we can look at that participation and pathway through to that level and push them into our clubs, we're always going to have this issue in clubbing. So that's what keeps me awake at night in terms of thinking about how we can do that. I'd like to think, I've had experience at that from a lower level, at a club level, and trying to bring some of those young boys through to the premier grade. But now, how do we transfer that into a TRU level and bring those participation numbers up and through to clubland? Yeah.
What about the survival of clubs? Because we've got clubs that are, the clubs are declining because of, I guess, number of issues, but mainly a shift from volunteering. It was volunteers really putting their hand up and getting stuck into their community club. So, what's your thought on what clubs and how the TRU can help clubs survive?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head again, Les, with the volunteer model. Because a lot of us are involved in our clubs through that pure passion, and we don't do it for anything other than that. And I see a lot of the parents are involved because their kids are involved. The challenge is, how do we keep those parents that are involved while their kids are there on when their kids either move off and go to uni or move into other spaces? How do we do that? So that's the challenge for us, is that volunteer model is very crucial to us. We've had a few goes at it in the last sort of 3 years around club capability management, which is a different aspect to the volunteer model. And do we, how do we grow that and keep our volunteers in the game? And of course,
so I'll touch on that because I am one. I am a capability manager at Marist Club, and I can honestly tell you that my club loves that, because there's someone who's not full-time but focused on the strategic side of what the club can do to grow, the funding side of things. So what's your take on the club capability manager as far as its success, or how it can be modified to continue
to sustain?
Be sustainable?
I think there's got to be a balance, and it's interesting. I think we've got there's a catch up, I think, in a couple of weeks with all the club capability managers. One of the things I'm getting to understand is, and you guys do it well at Marist, is how have you done that mix? How have you done that blend between your volunteers, yourself, and I guess the committee, and how that works? How do we, and we've got to review that and understand it, because it's been going. There are some clubs that do it really well. I noticed the Marlborough clubs didn't take up the club capability manager model. Is that reflective of what we're seeing now over in Marlborough in terms of only having 2 clubs in the comp? There's some work we've got to do in that space, and working with those clubs to try and understand, hey, this is what's working well. In Les's case with Marist and Stoke, I've got to say, has got a good model as well.
Look, all of those who've got them are all behind it, because Wanderers, Marist, Waimea Old Boys, Rewalker, Huia, ourselves, and Nelson have a CCM, and they are making a big contribution to their club in the absence of volunteers.
So
it's the only watch out would be that all of a sudden you have no volunteers because they go, oh, we've got a paid person to do it. And that doesn't work. You got to have a good committee, and hopefully a subcommittees underneath that, because one person can't do everything.
They can't do everything. No way. Right. The union has been without a CEO since October, and there was the sudden departure of Lyndon Bray. The role has been advertised just last month. So what's taken so long?
Well, there's a wee bit to work through once Lyndon left. But we're well down that process now. We're literally shortlisted last week, so we're into interviews, and we're hoping going to have an announcement in the next couple of weeks.
But you would be hearing the consternation out there in clubland that it's been 6 months and without a leader, right?
Yep.
So
it's on us, to get it done, and we're working as fast as we can in that space. We had to do our due diligence. We had a number of applicants, just under about 30 applicants. So we had to work through all of those and make sure that we shortlisted well and got what we think is a good list to go through.
So you're confident that in your shortlist you've got a dynamic leader who'll take the club forward?
Yeah, it's one of those things that we have to, we there's a whole lot, and as we see on our program later today, there's a lot happening in the rugby world, not just in Tasman but across the country that impacts what we do.
Yeah.
So, and I think we'll get to some of that later on.
I know you're going to find a CEO, but I just do want to give a shout out to Kahu Marfell, who's done
absolutely.
a terrific job as interim CEO. Grown an arm and a leg, very good communications. So yeah.
And he's
I
been,
hope Kahu gets a good nod from the board at the end of this.
Look, the guy's an absolute legend, and not just the TRU and that what he's doing now, but in the TRU, and what he does in that community space as well across the region.
Yep, he's the king.
The Tasman AGM, that's going to be held on April 29. And so tell us about the state of the union and financially, how's it looking?
Yeah, financially, we're looking pretty good. I can't go into too much detail around that. We're still, the auditors are still there. So, look, we've had a couple of lean years, I guess is the best way to say. But this year's looking pretty good. The AGM is going to get pushed out just because the auditors are there. So we'll confirm that date later, hopefully in the next week or two, around what that date is. And also the venue at this year is down to be in Blenheim because it was in Nelson last year. So, the state of the union in terms of financially is pretty good.
We talked a bit about the community rugby, but there's other aspects to the union. We've got commercial marketing and sponsorship. Then you've got your high performance area with the Mako squad and both men and women. So how are those things shaping up?
Geez, commercial marketing, talk to this man. We talk about kings of things. Look, commercial marketing is a delicate space. It's particularly lately with businesses and those commercial supporters, they've got to look closely at their dollar and where it goes. No different to running a household, really. So that's always the challenge. We've got to do certain aspects. We've got to get around those guys and our major sponsors and all our sponsors and commercial aspects and understand it and really make an effort there. We're doing okay so far, but we can always do better in that space. We always want to do better in that space. But it is a really hard space to walk in, particularly with today's climate, financial climate around the region.
So high performance, this is the sexy bit of Tasman Rugby Union and the Tasman Mako. So everyone wants to see the Tasman Mako at their peak, both men and women in 2024. So firstly, the NPC and FPC coaching lineups. Can you tell us who's who?
Yeah, so we got Gray and Hawani back this year.
So that's Gray Cornelius and Hawani McDonald.
So that provides us some good continuity there. We're in the throes of getting an assistant forward coach together. We're pretty close to announcing that.
No announcement today on the show?
No announcement. No, not today. We've got a couple of things to tidy up there. In terms of the women's space, Latoya Mason is our woman. She's also involved full time now in that space around our women's space.
Full time. Okay, that's good.
So she'll also lead our campaign for our FPC women, which is exciting. And it was, with our HP space, we've tried to really combine it with our TRU strategy this year, which we changed. Still have our lifelong love of the game. Which is important. That's our purpose. And then trying to integrate the two so that we get full benefit out of our coaches, and that's throughout the year. So both Hawani and Gray are currently working in our community space as well. So they're both on board in their off seasons. So that's great. And so that really helps us, I think, to try and grow. Because I'm a believer that we've got to try and grow within first and develop those pathways for those players coming through, both men and girls, or boys and girls, to go on and be FPC, NPC players.
Yeah, I did see that Gray's set out an invite to all clubs around 4 sessions with covering all aspects of coaching and development. So I know in my club, there are people taking that up, and it's a great offer. And I've seen Latoya out in Clubland. So Latoya Mason was the assistant to Mel Bosman last year. So it's great that
actually Mel did mention her, so we're going to have to get her on the show.
Absolutely, and we will. But it's great that she decided to continue with our Mako women because, you know, they're an exciting group of people who just play for the love of the game. And we would like to see them, you know, continue to do well. But let's talk about the Mako men because at the end of the day, they drive the revenue. And that's because historically our fans have loved the Mako fins up, the way they play and their connection, if you like, because a lot of them are local. So first of all, any new signings?
No new signings. Although we have got, well, he's not a new signing, Sione Havili. So he's back this year.
So does that mean he's not going to play international rugby?
We're just working our way through that process. All indications are that he'll stick with us, which is great. We got Levi Amar, who's re-signed.
Oh, great. Fantastic.
So that was a big tip for our guys to get him back on board. The only losses we've had to date are Anton Segner. So he's thrown his lot in with the Auckland team for this year.
Right.
PC team, yeah. So and he's up at the moment playing for the Blues.
Right.
So he's a big loss. So
yeah.
we have to try and fill those boots.
Yeah. So, but also there are some players who've gone from last year, who we knew and loved, like Alex Nackaville and Mitchell Hunt, Shannon Frizzell, Andrew Makaleo. They're big shoes to fill. So if you've got no new signings, can we expect that those spots get taken by local players, or are you looking?
We haven't looked too far. Like I said, part of our strategy is to try and recruit from within. We've said that we're going to look at the Tasman Trophy intently at some of those players coming through, and see if we can't fill those gaps locally.
So that strategy you talk about, is there a KPI behind it, or what does it mean?
Yeah, so we've got a KPI in terms of what we'd like to see. Currently, I think our KPI for the Mako team is 83%. We've got 83% of our team is local. We'd like to, as part of our strategy, try and push that well into the 90s. That might take a little bit of time given our contracting arrangements we have, but we'd like to try and get that up into the 90s. And then hopefully, well, if we can do that this year with some good local signings, and then definitely into next year.
So what's the definition of local?
Oh, geez, now you're taking me this.
I can tell you.
Yeah. So
either born at Nelson Hospital or Marlborough.
No, well,
it doesn't matter if you've played. You haven't played for Nelson, but if you're good enough, you're in.
I think if you played club rugby in Nelson.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So JAB, and so it's JAB club rugby essentially in the region.
Right.
And so that's why we're trying to just push that because we had to define it, right? For the, you can't have a KPI without a definition behind it. So that's why we did it. And that made it very clear for everyone what we're trying to aim for.
Yeah. Which we're going to talk about shortly, but that's why academies are so important at provincial level, because it gives people a reason to come, have a crack at play club rugby, have a crack at the Mako and be a local, fall in love, stay around.
Yeah. And I guess Alex Nangle was a case of that. Yeah. He's just a perfect example of it.
All right. Now, as chair, you have your finger on the pulse of the fans' expectations. So I guess what we'd like to know is, what does a successful season look like from your perspective and the TRU's perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So I look at that, and I think from a personal perspective, I'm just as competitive as an SWAS. I want to win everything. Right? I don't think you'd find many fans that don't disagree with that. But from a TRU perspective, I think if we go back to our purpose and look at how we're inspiring those younger players to come through, and creating those pathways. So if we can look back at the season and say, well, and I know it's a cliche, but if we can look at some of the way we play the game and create it, that inspires some of this next generation to go through and be that, then that's great. The big thing for me is, can we improve a successful season as participation numbers? Can we get those up and keep them up? But I'd love to, see our boys back in the top four, because that's where they belong. And our women up there as well, because they came really close last year.
They did, yeah.
So I'd love to see both teams. For me, success would be both teams in the top four, competitive. Obviously, winning the whole lot is a desire. I think every club has that. So and we're no different, But we've got to be real in what our overall aspects and success looks like for a union. So
I think a minimum would be playoffs. from my perspective, and I'm a fan. So
Yeah.
and to people I talk to, we do want to see the team playing, challenging for, quarterfinals, semi-finals, final.
Yep.
There's no doubt about that, and they should be able to do it. There's some really good talent in our region.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look at our player list, right, on both sides, men and women's. We've definitely got the talent involved in those squads to do it. So,
well, wish you well with that. I'm going to ask you a couple of important questions from a national perspective.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of media discussion about whether or not the New Zealand Rugby Union or New Zealand Rugby and the board is fit for purpose to take the game into the future as a result of the Pilkington report. Now, the Pilkington report was a report, an independent report into governance commissioned by New Zealand Rugby and the New Zealand Rugby Players Association. So what is the TRU point of view on this, and does your board support the report and the recommendations?
We support them to an extent of looking at the makeup of the board and the NZR board I'm talking about, and understanding what that looks like. The Pilkington report was a good overview of where we could improve at governance level, at NZR level. And, our board has looked at that and gone, shucks, there's a lot in it that we agree with. I guess the sticking point is, how do you get that fully independent board without losing the members of that board or independents having that really good sound knowledge of community and club rugby first off, and then how a PU operates. That's important because we don't want to lose that.
Yeah. So as I understand it, the independent New Zealand Rugby board would be truly independent and have a skill set and skills matrix that allows them to govern New Zealand Rugby properly. And then beneath that would be a stakeholder council where all the rugby IP could sit. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, lots of different iterations of that, Les, but yeah, that's essentially where it's at. And I guess the whole key in the discussion has been for and look, I just want to make it clear that not all PUs are in agreement with the Pilkington report. And we've still got the Māori and Pacifica take on the report. They're slightly different as well. So, it's very much still up in the air for discussion. But the key is in the wording and the key is in the skill set. And that's what we've debated at PU level, is that skill set requirement to sit on the board and the wording behind, because currently you can go through an independent route to get on the NZR board, and then you can go through an elected route, and the PUs have a say on 3 seats at that table. Currently, one of them's held by our own Wayne Young. He's doing a fantastic job for us, by the way. And, it's guys like Wayne, Arjit, and Brett Mather from Auckland that, that have had that PU experience, direct PU experience, that sit on that board. And our fear is, losing that contact, and therefore the understanding of what it takes to, some of the challenges like we're having right now in TRU, some of the challenges and understanding those and not losing that understanding.
So what I'm hearing is you wouldn't be fully in support of the NZRPA request that everybody just fall on their sword and resign, and we get a new independent board.
Yeah, so the NZRPA is another entity involved in it outside of the ones I've just mentioned. So, and they're, when they look at it, they're representative of a certain player group, and I respect that and I understand that. But also, as it was said to be quite bluntly the other day, they represent, maybe 2,500 players, where the PUs represent 150,000 players. And how do we merge the two to come to a pretty good understanding?
Yeah.
So there's that argument to it.
And also who makes the final decision, because if you're talking about a separate kind of union board that gives advice to an overarching board, that overarching board could say, no, we don't agree. I like the idea of the mix where you've got skill sets in the right positions, but there's also strong representation from the community who are involved at that club level, who can say, well, this is actually reality, and I think the players' union is separate, because you've got to have the two entities separate, one for autonomy and for the players' union to have a go at the board if they need to, and also you've got negotiations happening as well. So Yeah, so I don't see the model changing too much. And I think it's very important. The New Zealand Rugby Union doesn't have carte blanche on the direction of the game. And that's been proven in the past. Hence, the Tasman Mako kicking up a fuss, and Northland and Manawatu getting kicked out of the comp. So I think it's very important to have that representation.
Yeah, I think you're dead right. I do believe that that's right. Whether that's through a seat at the board at the highest level or a strong say at the stakeholder council.
Well, at the end of the
will be
day,
worked out, right?
it comes down to a vote. You know, you've got to have a quorum and you've got to have a vote to make to push decisions forward. And so that's why it's important to have a seat at the table with voting rights, I feel.
Yeah, and
That's my
and
opinion.
the Pilkington report does go into the current constitution and changes that should be made to that. But currently, the constitution allows that voice and vote to be had. So whether or not there is change, will the appetite for as change as drastic as requested by the Pilkington report will remain to be seen. Another aspect that the report talked about was the responsibility for player development sitting at Super Rugby level rather than provincial union academies. And I've got a small problem with that, because without provincial union academies, you cannot invite players from outside your region who can play club rugby, grow the game here, and go on to better and better things. So, the pathway would seem to me under this model that you play college first 15, then you go to one of the 5 major cities, and then you become a Super Rugby player and an All Black.
It goes against the grain of against our strategy, right? We were after player participation development into our Tasman Mako NPC FPC spaces. So there's that aspect of it, but you'd argue that we've been fortunate, and maybe it's just the relationship and how it's come about in terms of the Crusader Academy we have here in Nelson, and how that's helped us, definitely given us some really good Mako boys.
Yeah, well, that was clearly a strategy from a previous CEO that's paid off in spades for our rugby, and I'd love to see it continue. It's just got to be affordable, right?
Well, it's got to be affordable, and it's got to be, we're not just talking about Mako boys now. We're talking about the girls as well, and we've got to make space for them. Absolutely, and how do we, align those two? So, but I'm definitely in your space, Liz, in terms of, it's all got to come back to the Tasman Mako at the end of the day, and how do we, we've got a remit to make our group and our union successful. And does it fit with the model that's just been proposed around the Super Rugby development? A lot of discussion to go into that one.
You need good, solid representation, don't you? Come on, Wayne.
Yeah, that's right. Well, there's a point in case. You've got to have them on the board.
So, lastly, Baz, shock horror news in the press this week that Sky TV and NZR have announced that they're not going to be able to provide live television coverage of NPC from 2026, which isn't that far away. No. I believe they're going to maybe do a game. So I guess that is a commercial decision by Sky TV. So say it did come, a lot of people would applaud that, because I remember a lot of people arguing that if you didn't have live TV, you'd have bigger crowds. Like that theory is going to be tested in 2026, isn't it? But my question is around our venues, Lansdowne Park and Trafalgar Park. We could still put on a great game day experience. We wouldn't have to go to smaller grounds for Mako games.
Those 2 grounds are our homes, right? And that'll never change. Or not while I'm sitting in this chair anyway. And you could, if we wanted to go to smaller grounds, but why would we? They're accessible. They house our team.
They're cost efficient.
And they're cost efficient. So in that respect, nothing changes for us. In terms of the commercial aspect of what's been announced, I guess there is Comco within NZR that's been set up. They've just got a new CE themselves. They're looking at that now. NZR Live is an app or a platform that I was thinking about this on the weekend, just potentially how we could still do that. But again, on the weekend I was at a pre-season game, And I was sitting on the bank at Lansdowne number 3 watching the game, and a lot of people came up to me about that and said, "Oh, wouldn't it be great? You know, people actually have to go to the game to watch it," which from our perspective would be great. You know, if we can get those numbers.
And
up.
it was interesting in that discussion. I'm pretty sure it was Rugby talking about the mix of a lesser involvement with Sky and pursuing, commercial sponsorship using their own coverage.
That's NZ.
And in fact, when you do the numbers and potentially a bit of a deal with free to air, not unlike it's Duke, isn't it? Oh no, Sky Open, who have done a deal to get the numbers up through free to air. So that kind of mix, they were talking that Sky may have a lesser involvement anyway, potentially in the future, and they're forecasting they could potentially make more money.
Oh, look, and like I said, there's a new commercial CE coming to NZR.
Right.
He's got some fantastic plans around that. He's mentioned a few platforms I can't, because none of them are in stone yet, but I think there's some exciting stuff that he's going to throw at us.
Yeah.
So we'll probably still see highlights or whatever, but there's nothing to stop us at a local level also live streaming on our Facebook page.
Yeah,
right?
Mate, we've got the commentary gear all set to go. Yes.
Yep.
We've got the commentator,
There you go.
the expert panel.
we'll see how that all plays out. But wonderful. Lastly, where do you see provincial rugby in 5 years' time?
Well, that's a small question.
Look, I think it's not just a case of where I see it. I think where it needs to be. I think we've got to grow it. I think it is the lifeblood of not just our game, because it is, but more so our communities. You know, it really does over the centuries. You know, over the decades, brought these communities together. I think it's that important to us. You know, it's where a lot of us connect. We may not see each other for weeks on end, but go to a game. You know, and I might not see Les for 3 or 4 weeks, but go to a Marist Central game.
Yeah.
I think it's important that provincial rugby stays strong. I think with the right models in place and the right strategies, it can remain strong. I will say this though, on the other side of that, you know, we've got to entertain. We have to produce a product that entertains and makes people want to watch and come to the game and play the game. You know, so that's my challenge, I guess, to our coaches, managers, administrators of our, not just our club rugby, but even our junior grades and into our Mako spaces. Let's entertain, because if we can do that, you know, we will draw people to it. And if we can do that at provincial level,
entertainment and energy. You know, the difference between watching Fiji and Brewer on the weekend and watching the Kiwi games is chalk and cheese. They were joyful. They were having the time of their lives. The crowd was right into it in Lautoka, and then the other games were big stadiums and fairly difficult to watch.
Helps they're playing people at 1 o'clock in the afternoon over there. And it's
daytime rugby now. Without Sky, there's more daytime rugby perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
And we'd love that.
Hey Baz, thank you very much for coming in, mate.
Been a pleasure.
It leads us into an exciting season ahead, and there's a lot of challenges for you on the table. But you've taken on the role, and good on you, mate. And obviously you've got a sense of being involved with club rugby right at grassroots, right the way through, and bring that knowledge through to the governance level. And it sounds to me as though you've certainly got a universal or global view on what you'd like to see with the game. And of course, it's the board's job to set that precedent. And then hopefully we can all, grow the game individually, club by club, which is what it's all about. And the end product, of course, is our elite, that will perform in the paddock, which we're really looking forward to this year. So we appreciate your insight. We certainly look forward to some announcements coming very shortly, so I'm sure you are too.
Yeah, definitely.
And we look forward to the season ahead. We really appreciate you coming in, giving us your time.
Great, thanks, gentlemen. Hey, thanks for having me, and it's been a pleasure.
Cheers, Les. Thank you very much, mate. Once again, comprehensive homework done there, mate. And
Season 3, episode 1, done and dusted, mate. See you next week.
Yeah, that's right. I know. But we're really looking forward to it. That's another edition to the Mako Rugby Roundup. A big thank you to our venue sponsor, of course, the Turf Hotel.
Yeah, well done, Stan.
Good on you, Stan, and don't forget to come and check them out. Of course, our special guest, Baz Hanaro, Chair of Tasman Rugby Union. And Les, have a good weekend, mate. Enjoy Thursday night rugby.
We'll do that.
You can listen to this and other podcasts on the new MBS Talk Nelson. And also you'll find Talk Nelson now on Spotify. So make sure
congratulations, Chris. Well done. We can listen to it in the car.
You can. Until next week, we'll see you again on the Mako Rugby Roundup.
The Mako Rugby Roundup. What's on, where, and when. It's the Talk of Nelson. NBS Talk Nelson.